On behalf of VMUG, thank you so much for joining us today for this webcast, Enhance and Extend VMware Horizon While Reducing Total Operating Costs, presented by Andrew Parlett and Chris Sueva of Tricerat. I would like to thank you for participating in today's webcast and for your continued support in the Global VMUG program. Before we begin today, I have 3 quick housekeeping items to go over. First, today's webcast will be recorded email with this link, so be looking out for it. And second, if you have any questions during the webcast, please use the Q&A widget window to submit your questions. We'll be sure to get to them. And third, be sure to download the documents in the handout section, which also includes the webcast slides. And lastly, for those of you who opted in at registration and who are attending live today, will be eligible to win a $100 Amex gift card. So good luck to everyone out there. All right, let's get started. I'd like to introduce you to today's speakers, Andrew Parlett, CTO of Tricerat, and Chris Suela, Sales Engineer at Tricerat. Guys, welcome to the webcast. I'd like to turn things over to you now.
Thank you. Yes, I'm Andrew, and we have on screen the topics that we'll be covering today while we talk about enhancing and extending VMware Horizon while reducing the total cost of operating when dealing with printing. And so we are going to go into a little bit of an overview of some of the costs of printing. We have some industry data to share, and we'll talk about really why this is an important topic and some get you thinking about certain possibilities as far as how we can really find areas of saving when we're dealing with management of printing. We'll get into that ROI as we talk about adding a layer on top of VMware Horizon and how that value add can then result in ROI out into your environments. And we'll really dig into what the solution looks like. We'll even have some a little bit of demo where we can actually see how this interacts with your systems from the administrator view and a user view, and we'll really dig into that. So watch for some live demos coming up. And then we will, of course, talk about our VMware partnership. We've been very close partners with VMware in ways that we really integrate into that Horizon stack. Okay, so let's start with the costs that really come up when we're talking about printing. And so there was some industry research done as far as across a wide range of industries and environments, really what the costs of printing really were when you dig into it. And some of the estimates that came out were up to 3% of total revenue of companies could be spent on printing costs. And, you know, when you really start thinking about revenue of your company and what 3% of that is, quite often that really could be a pretty large chunk of money where it's a potential savings avenue. And then when we look at the help desk costs, around 23% of support tickets are printing related. So again, the amount of time and cost that goes into the help desk, and that's both staffing the help desk and having those engineers on there, but then also productivity costs of when users are calling into the help desk and time it takes to resolve sometimes simple printing matters, but as those minutes add up, really a lot of time cost in there as well as hard dollars. So again, a big area as we look at the cost of printing of ways that we can really have an opportunity to save. So if we look at the breakdown of where these costs come, obviously we think about the hardware costs of the printers and usually of paper and some of those other consumables. But really a lot come into play when we get into operating costs as far as the infrastructure and all of the setup involved in getting printing deployed and working and keeping it working. And then we have those indirect costs, and that's really where we're talking about the help desk costs and support. The end user productivity. Sometimes it's help desk engineers, and sometimes it's escalated up, and you're talking about some of your VMware administrators or system administrators out there dealing with some of these printing problems. And as those escalations happen, sometimes there's really a lot of that time spent really that's high dollar and taking away from other initiatives in the environment that need to be done when you're talking about kind of the larger scope of managing your VMware deployments. So 50% there of indirect costs and even a large chunk in operating costs. Again, if we can reduce the amount spent on some of these things like the help desk costs or your administrator time or even the productivity of your end users, there's really a lot of opportunity for savings there when we start talking about ROI. So at a high level, I want to introduce three different customer spotlights just to kind of look at some customers that we have out in the field and ways that they've saved time and money by deploying our solutions. So first, an insurance company from the Midwest of the United States. This was a company that was a little more distributed geographically, so there were small offices, satellite offices spread around, not necessarily one central location. So they had people out at these different spots where there wasn't solid IT administration, people moving between offices. So there's certain challenges there as far as just enabling printing in those environments, connecting into those VMware Horizon desktops in their infrastructure. And then just the amount of time that employees were taking trying to get printing configured in the right way for the office that they were in, these type of things. Well, this particular company did a study before and after implementing our solution, and they realized a savings that they put a dollar figure on of $360,000 per year. So with employee savings, that's a recurring savings that they have that's really contributing to their bottom line. Next up is a MSP, actually a company that has their own application. It's a healthcare application that they deploy out from the cloud out to their remote clients. And so obviously they have control over their particular cloud environments, but their customers are ones connecting in that they don't have direct control over their the IT infrastructure of their particular clients. So there's only so much that they can do to layer on as far as getting either software or hardware out to those sites. In this case, we enabled our session printing, or really what that is the client printers that are already connected out to the client workstations. But then when they connect into those remote applications and their virtual desktops, having that connect reliably every time and having the print job print successfully, by deploying a solution from before to after, they saw a reduction of 30% in terms of help desk calls coming into their call center. So obviously time savings for their help desk staff, time savings for their end users, a better service that they're offering out to those end users. So really a lot of value derived from putting this kind of a print management solution in place. And then they have, that's time freed up for some of those other higher level initiatives that need to go on in the back end. And we have a hospital. This is a large hospital building and network in Texas. And so they have a mix of platforms in play. A lot of their work is with thin clients connecting into VMware Horizon to virtual desktops. But they do have some physical desktops as well. So they needed a management platform, not just for managing printing in Horizon, but also out to traditional Windows desktops. And to be able to do that in a consistent way with one management interface without having to jump back and forth between these different systems, both enhance their administrator efficiency, but then also the users had that more stable environment of whether they're connecting into a VDI session powered by VMware or walking up to a traditional Windows desktop, their printing was consistent between all of that. Obviously, in healthcare, we're looking at security considerations, a wide variety of documents printing out of those medical record management systems, and being able to deploy a solution that really helped drive really ease of use for getting the right printer to the right workstation. So when a doctor or nurse would walk up to a thin client and badge in to get their VDI session, to have the right printer there consistently every time. Their administration team, they had 4 of their engineers pretty much full-time working on printing and some of the challenges there. And they were able to reduce that down to really one person in charge of it and only part of the time for that particular person. So again, these are the engineers that are working on deploying the VMware Horizon solutions. So to be able to free them up from the printing management and enable some of their other management tasks was really a huge win for their team. All right, so I'm going to pass it over to Chris and talk about our ROI.
All right, thank you, Andrew. So ROI for your company. What we've done is we've taken some of those stats that Andrew mentioned in the last slides, and those stats are coming from a third-party independent researcher called Kiyosirka. They're not developed by Tricerat, the printing company. There's someone out there who's doing this research and coming up with those numbers. So what we've done is we've taken those statistics, those numbers, and created an ROI calculator that we've put on our website, and you can go to that website down link at the bottom. So you can calculate your own potential return on investment using a solution from Tricerat. So we've taken those numbers, we've taken those stats, we've created a calculator, put it on their website, and you can create and see your potential savings using a solution, a printing solution from Tricerat. And this is just for those hard dollars, those hard numbers that we saw before. This doesn't take into account some of those indirect and intangible costs that Andrew mentioned before in the last slides. User productivity, satisfaction, taking your view administrators and moving them to something more important instead of just focusing on printing or printing policies. You can give printing to your help desk and your tech support, and now they can do it, and then your architects can be focused on the more important things. So one of the big things that we developed in the last year or so is this ROI calculator, and we've given you it right on our website, a tool to help you see your potential savings, and then hopefully use those potential savings or use those numbers to see how much money you could save using the solution from Tricerat.
All right, let's dig into the solution a little bit. Hopefully that kind of paints the picture as far as what's at stakes here and what can be gained by adding this into a VMware Horizon environment. But we want to go through kind of the different aspects of the solution and the products, and we'll, of course, get to a demo of it as well. So first, from the administrator side, really one of the main driving factors of this is just easy provisioning of printers and then driver management made simple. At the core, this is a virtual driver that can be used so that no longer do you have to manage the actual Windows driver in your VDI or your other Windows sessions. It really needs to be one place, which is either the client workstation or on a print server. And so from there on, when we're talking about creating an image for your VDI systems or updating drivers, or as new desktops are built up from those images, no longer do we have to manage the drivers within that image. We're going to do that through our virtual driver, and we'll take care of everything as far as building the right print queue within that user session. So the amount of time, the amount of time reduction based on just being able to eliminate the driver management across your environment, and particularly within these VDI images, is a real big point of this particular solution. And as far as the easy provisioning of printers go, we do have the Simplified Console, where here you can see Active Directory objects and environmental objects such as device names or IP ranges are available over on the left. And then over on the right are the printers from print servers or other areas of your environment. And it's a very easy matching of taking a printer, assigning it to an Active Directory user or a device name or what have you.
Hi, Andrew and Chris, are you guys still there?
Yes. Can you not hear? Can you hear me, Candace?
I'm not hearing your audio.
Candace, can you hear me? Hello?
Yes, I can hear you now. Great. Sorry, it cut out just for a couple seconds. Yep, all good.
So here in the Simplified Console, we have this easy connection between printers that are in the environment and users and devices that are in the environment. It's a simple drag and drop interface, which we'll demonstrate a little later on as far as how simple that is to provision printers out on the network. And really just that optimized network utilization. No longer do we have to copy drivers around. When a new workstation, when a new virtual desktop is spinning up from that image, we don't have to copy the driver across the network and install it onto the system. So we're really taking time that's normally spent in doing those type of log-on activities and really reducing it down to basically nothing. It's basically a database call. So that login process happens a lot more quickly, and the user gets to their desktop and their applications as fast as possible.
Okay, from an end user experience, what we really tried to focus on was simplification for the end user. So in the video we're about to see, you'll see how the printers look and feel like normal Windows printers, even though they're being deployed and managed and built by us, by Simplified Printing or one of our other solutions. The printers really look and feel like normal Windows printers, including the features and functionalities that come with those printers. So that user experience is consistent across not just our printing, but also other printings in your environment, to limit that learning curve of using a new product like something from Tricerat. We also have context-aware locations and groups, so you can assign, like Andrew briefly mentioned before, you can assign printers to individual locations or OUs, security groups, other user-based objects in your directory. And then there is some self-service capability. Users can add their own printers if you choose to let them. Users can add their own printers to their environments. This is great for users who are traveling to different floors or different buildings, different sites throughout the office, where they could see where they are in that particular location, or pull up a map of where they are and add a printer on their own. So we're going to take a quick look at the video. So here I'm just on a general Windows 10 workstation through Horizon View. And as you can see, I have a couple of different printers, and these printers are coming from different aspects of the Active Directory. As I pull up the Lexmark native driver UI, you can see that even though the Lexmark driver is not installed, we're still able to pull up that native driver UI for this particular printer. Each printer is using our universal print driver. As I click through, you can see the model that it's using. And then the last printer right there is being redirected. That is our local or session-based printing. For self-service side, for adding their own printers, here's a quick map of a particular floor. I'm going to add this brother printer right here. And then a simple add printer. And then what we're going to do is we're going to refresh the printer queues to build that new brother printer. If we give it a sec. And there we go. There's that new brother printer. You saw how fast adding that new printer was, because again, we're not installing the native driver. We're just building a queue around the universal print drivers already there. I can set that printer as default, and then of course I can remove that printer. Now this is just the self-service side. This can be turned off or disabled from an administrator side in case admins want to control what printers users see. But if you have traveling users or users who move around a lot, or users you may not know which printers they need that particular day, that particular week, this is a great option for them. We're going to see more of this in the full-scale demo, but this is just a quick look at the end user experience.
So to cover some of the situations, that kind of looks at both the administrator side and the user side. But really, when we start dealing with more details of how this operates within that VMware Horizon environment with VDI or hosted applications, it's really that print management solution that covers both a Horizon deployment and the wider range when we're looking at a hybrid platform scenario of managing printing across the environment for any Windows session. So within that VDI session or your other hosted applications, really like what we talked about as far as stopping the management of print drivers, an amazing time savings can be realized by not having to go into those images all the time and updating the drivers. And it's that virtual driver that Chris was talking about that really enables this, as far as not having to do the install each time, but having everything ready to go when a user provisions a new desktop and logs in, to make that as quick and as seamless as possible. And that could be a redirection of local printers for client printing. It could be your network printers, even direct IP or other types of printing that we'll get into. So a wide range, all from that central console. And then, of course, the user view is showing really only that screwdrivers, our Tricerat driver that's enabled, and still granting full access to the features of a printer. When it comes to workstation printing, we've talked about that virtual driver, but in scenarios that need a native driver, we can store a native driver in the database and deploy that. There's a couple of situations where that makes sense. One of those is workstation printing, where it's the same user logging into that workstation each time. And so if a deployment needs the native driver deployed out to that workstation, we have the capability to do that as well. Or environments where there aren't print servers, perhaps smaller environments or remote locations where you want that kind of direct IP printing. If that's the most optimal path, then we can manage both a direct IP scenario or a print server scenario, all from within that same management console. And here's in that management console, before we were down at the print server printers. Here, these are native print drivers being managed from within that same management console. And then finally, mobile printing. Tricerat a few years ago developed a standalone product for mobile printing. We're looking at taking your normal enterprise printers that may or most likely may not be enabled for mobile printing, but then distributing those out for Apple devices or Android devices through a native print mechanism based on those platforms. So this year in 2019, we're integrating that into our simplified printing product. So within that same console, the same way you would distribute a printer out to a Horizon session, you could also take that same printer and enable it for a user's mobile session as well. So again, another type of printing all being integrated into the same system.
Okay, so in addition to some of our printing products, we do have a suite of other products. The first one we're going to talk about is scanning. This is called Simplified Scanning. It's kind of that printing in reverse. So instead of redirecting a local printer, you're redirecting or mapping a local scanner into remote sessions, into your host application or your desktop. Great for if you want to get hard copies, hard documents up a channel into a remote server or a remote database somewhere in your environment. So there are a few things here that we can take a look at. Let's take a look at the screenshot. The big thing about our simplified scanning product is our scanning prompt. It adds a prompt, like a printing prompt almost, but it adds a prompt before a scan job is actually uploaded into the remote session, where you can configure some settings about that scan job, like page options, source, where that document's coming from, the size, the color mode, the resolution, and you can also preview that scan job as well, so you can make changes to the actual scan job before it's uploaded into your environment. So instead of having to rescan jobs or redo this or redo that, what you can do is you can edit that job live before the scan job's actually uploaded into the application. So this is just a quick screenshot. If you're interested, definitely get a hold of us for a full demo of simplified scanning. There are some server side, some global configurations. The big ones are configuring or dictating the bits that go across the wire, or you can configure the speed of the scan job across the wire for your particular network. But the big idea of simplified scanning is allowing you to take hard copies across the wire into a remote application somewhere in your environment.
Okay, and printing is certainly a large part of user management and profile management. Again, kind of those uniquenesses for users that are logging in to a session. But Tricerat does have a tool for additional user profile management based on registry settings, files that need to get into the user profile, GPOs. And so, you know, one of the things that we look at reducing from the printing side is not managing by GPO or by scripts. Those are things that usually get more complicated, certainly as you scale. And so our drag and drop mechanism really helps reduce that. And the same for other profile methods as far as distributing registry keys or files or these sorts of things. So in addition to printing in the user profile, we can do other profile-based management here within that same console if that's something that's necessary as you layer on top of the VMware Horizon VDI.
Okay, before we get into the demonstration, there is a question, some feedback. First from John W. His feedback is keeping native full features available and allowing users to add their own printers devices are great things to see done well. These factors I have seen left out of plans for managed printing and unified drivers. Thank you very much, John, for that feedback. And that's one of the things we wanted to focus on was even though you're only deploying a universal print driver, the users still need access to those features of all those printers. So where most universal print drivers, and we'll see this in the demonstration, give you access to a standard set of features, we're giving you access to everything those printers can do. And then adding that self-service of printers for the users is particularly nice, especially if you as an admin don't know or don't want to control which printers those users have.
Yeah, certainly a unique thing. One other question that came in was about encryption of the print job. I think we mentioned security a couple times, particularly like in the healthcare environment. But yes, we do both compress and encrypt the print streams between the user session that's running in the VDI environment and then also the print server. And so compression is certainly important when we're talking about going across a WAN link, to a remote location. We can make sure that's a minimal transfer process. And then the encryption, of course, to make sure that we're always staying secure. We spoke of mobile printing, and someone asked about being on the same network. For Android, that's not necessary. It's done over TCP/IP and can print fine. As long as you have connectivity back to the network, then the print job will route fine. You may know that Apple's AirPrint interface is a broadcast system, and which is something that needs to be on the same subnet. So for an AirPrint printer to show up, you do have to have a device to broadcast on that subnet. Now we have capabilities for our print servers to determine the subnet of the mobile device and then broadcast it from that print server. So it's a good question. It does need to be done, but we do have capabilities in there to make sure that we can broadcast out over the right subnet.
So another question, is there software that has to be installed on the printer, scanner, copier? On the physical device, no. There is an agent that goes on to the endpoints where you want to build your printers or build your virtual scanners. There's an agent that is installed. The great thing is those agents, they don't require maintenance windows or reboots for, say, servers, nor do they require, I'm sorry, I already said reboots, but they don't require reboots. That's a big thing. And the great thing is those agents can be installed quickly and easily. And we do, of course, have silent installation, silent installers. So if you're using something like SCCM or PDQ deploy, you can absolutely deploy those agents over the network with using those applications. Yeah. So let's get into the demonstration. So first thing, I'm going to pause it right off the bat. If I can get the mouse, there we go. So before we take a look at, getting deep into this, I want to talk a little bit about the products we're going to be showing in the demonstration. So what I'm going to be showing is Simplified Printing, our print server printing product, and Simplified Driver Management. Simplified driver management is how you're going to control the native drivers. Andrew mentioned this before, where direct IP printing is more preferable, or installing native drivers is more preferable for your endpoints. That is Simplified Driver Management. But the first product we're going to show is Simplified Printing. Simplified Printing greatly simplifies the management and deployment of print server printers. To do that, you'd use our Simplified Console. This is the centralized admin UI for Simplified Printing, as well as Simplified Driver Management, which we'll see in a bit. The big things are it's an application. As you notice, that it's not a website. I'm not pulling up a policy management snap-in for a GPO or anything like that. It is an application that can be hosted through your Horizon View, but it's an application that can be installed in your environment. Andrew mentioned this before as well, that the back end is a SQL database. So this Simplified Console is just a fancy UI front end to that back end SQL database. So in that sense, we don't need a centralized Simplified Printing server in that classical sense, a management server in that classical sense. You can install the Simplified Console on your admin workstation or give it to your tech support and help desk guys, and they can start managing printing. You don't need to spin up a new VM, a new 2016 VM just for Simplified Printing. Okay, so I'm going to start the video. Simplified Console, a lot of information on the screen, but as we walk through each of the sections, you'll see how it comes together pretty nicely. But as I just did, the big overview is our drag and drop console. I'm going to rewind that in case people missed it. Mouse back on the screen. There we go. Simplified Console is a drag and drop console. So you come down and you select a user, come over here, select a printer, and you drag and drop that printer for that user. And now the next time this user Fry logs into his workstation, his VDI, his host application, he'll have that new Zebra printer loaded for him, ready to go. So think about how you currently have to deploy printers out, whether through Horizon View or in a general Windows capacity, usually with GPOs or maybe scripting. Think about how you're currently doing it, and then compare it to what we just did. You notice I didn't use a GPO, I didn't force a GPO, I didn't write a script, I didn't do anything like that. I had to reboot a machine. All I did was simply drag and drop a printer into a particular assignment folder, and now Fry has access to that printer the next time he logs in or unlocks his computer. So there are three main aspects of the Simplified Console, three main panes: the owner's pane, the assignments pane, and the objects pane. The first pane, the owner's pane, are the users or computers in which you want to assign the printers to. Here I have a read-only version of my Active Directory pulled up to show we can make assignments not just to individual users, but also security groups and OUs. So I have this Canon assigned to this Planet Express OU. Fry is a part of that OU. So he's going to get that OU printer, just like he's getting his security group printer, as well as 2 printers assigned directly to him. So similar to GPOs or VMware view policies, you make assignments to the user-based aspects of your directory. But what about machines or users that are not AD enabled? This is where our location-based assignments come into play. Here you can make assignments to a variety of different locations or location-based aspects, including an IP address range, or machine ID or host name. And this is the source machine ID, source IP address. Think of your thin and zero clients for your VDI deployment, your Horizon VDI deployment. You can assign a printer to those source thin or zero clients. That way, no matter which user sits down in front of that client, they'll get that client printer. The example I like to use is a guest kiosk. Where it wouldn't make sense or would be impractical to assign a printer to the user who sits down in front of that kiosk. You don't know who that user might be, so you assign the printer to that location where that kiosk is. Very easy. We also have groups of computers where you can create a group. You can add objects to that group, including all the objects I mentioned before, and then assign a printer to that top level group like this Oki data printer is. So the objects will get that inherited group printer, sort of like OUs or security groups from your directory. Now let's switch gears and go over to the objects pane. As you can see, the objects pane are where your print servers and the printers on those print servers are going to be stored. We're not importing the print server or the printers. We're just reading the print server and the printers and storing some information. On the print server, you'll see a couple different aspects we'll touch on real quick. I'll get the mouse over here. There we go. First is our failover print server feature. So Microsoft 2012 R2 disable print server clustering. This is our solution to that. Here you can set up a secondary or tertiary, third, fourth print server to failover 2. We also have naming conventions. Here you can set up or dictate the naming convention of the printers once they reach the endpoints or once they're built for the users. We have a few presets, but you can customize the naming convention to whatever you need it to be. When you do it on the print server object, you're doing it for every printer on that print server. This is great for legacy applications or certain software that needs very particular naming conventions for their printers. I'm thinking about accounting software. That's usually a little finicky with printing. So you can set up that custom naming convention for those printers that make it easy for your software and for your users to use printing. And then we have bandwidth control. Let me save this real quick. And then you can dictate set up some bandwidth control for the print server or the jobs that go across the print server. So that is the print server. One thing I do want to point out is this advanced print features. We'll see how that works a little second, but let's take a look at the printers right now. When we read the printers on the print server, we're reading some information about those printers. The big thing is when we read the driver information, we're also reading the default driver settings. So if you have a particular printer set up for black and white or double-sided or duplexing or pin printing, we're reading those default driver settings. So when you assign that printer to a user using simplified printing, you're also assigning those settings to those users. You don't have to reconfigure or reset up those settings post-read. You can also dictate individual naming conventions for each printer on the print server, some of the same presets as well as the custom option. And then we have some advanced and extended options up here. I won't go through each of these tabs. These are more particular settings for particular situations. So if you have any, just ask the question. All right, last thing I want to talk about are our screwdriver settings. So screwdrivers is built into simplified printing and allows you, or it dictates, it helps you control those redirected printers. So we just talked about the print server printers. Here's where you can redirect your local printers into that remote session, that session-based printing. We have a few options to help you control those type of printers, including dictating how many printers are added from the local machine, the local source. And then we can monitor active sessions for changes to those local printers right here. We also have those same naming conventions we saw before. And then my redirected printers are actually named differently, and we'll see that in the end user session. And then, of course, we have some of those advanced and extended options as available with those printers as well. All right, let's move over to the assignments pane. The assignments pane are, of course, where the user and the printers kind of merge, come together. And again, that was a drag and drop process. So there are two distinct sections in the assignments, the admin assigned printers and the user allowed. Admin assigned printers are printers that are going to appear automatically for the users. They don't have to do anything. Where user allowed printers are printers that are for the self-service, printers they can add on their own if you want to make them available to you. You can also control some printers, delete assignments, of course. You can also deny inherited assignments. And then you can set default printers from an admin perspective. So they log in, they get that Conic Minolta as the default printer. So I'm going to reset this right here and then maybe pause and answer some questions. Okay. I think we have a few questions.
Yeah, a couple things came up here about the printing process. One question was about fob pickup or like a badge scan to print release. What our software does is we're delivering the print queue out to that end user desktop, be it their VDI or physical machine or the application that they have published. So we deliver the print job from there off to the print server. And so we can then integrate in with, at that point, with any other sort of release mechanism that you might have in the environment already. There's also a question about printer refresh, and this was an interesting point. The question is there a way to refresh the printer without, or like Chris showed, dragging and dropping a printer? Can the user get that refreshed on their desktop when they're already there? There's a couple ways to do that. So the answer is yes. We do have that self-service tool where you can go in and a user can hit refresh at any time and get their latest printer information. And in shared environments, there are admin interfaces that you could force a refresh by pushing that out to the environment as well. So there's a couple different ways to do that.
Absolutely. And we'll see those aspects, especially the live refresh coming up in the end user session. So let's take a look at that. If I get the mouse correct. Being a little finicky. There we go. It disappeared on me. All right, so we're going to move over to the end user side of things real quick, kind of see how that works. So, I'm sorry. Before we do that, let's take a quick look at the print server itself and what we do or enhance the print server. So with Simplified Printing, again, this is going to help you manage your print server printers, getting those print server printers over to your end user. So in Simplified Printing, a print server is still acquired, but we all know about the problems that come inherent with print servers. So what we do is we help enhance those print servers. The first thing is, as you can see, each printer on my print server only has a single driver assigned to it or a single driver installed for it. So with Simplified Printing, you don't have to worry about different drivers for different bits versions or different OS versions. A single driver per printer is all you need on the print server. The second thing in how we enhance the print server is we actually create a separate spool service per print job that comes onto the print server. So let's say in a normal print server environment, the spooler crashes, it could bring down the entire print server. Well, with Simplified Printing, if a spool service crashes or a spooler crashes, it's only going to crash for that single print job and not bring down the print server. And the third thing we saw before is that failover print server feature, where if for whatever reason the print server does crash, say the VM goes down or the NIC goes out, whatever it might be, we can also fail over to the second and third print server. So those are just a few of the things we do on the print server to help enhance the print server should you require it in your environment. As you see, I'm pointing out, I have a single driver for a printer, and then in a couple seconds, we're going to move to the end user session. So, all right, end user session. So I'm going to bring up my control panel, my devices and printers. We'll see the printers on my print server. One thing I don't think we've mentioned yet is we are manufacturer agnostic. We work with all makes and manufacturers. So I have a variety of different printers here, and you'll notice that these printers are from not just my AD user, but also through my location and my source. As I click through, again, notice that each printer is using the screwdriver universal print driver. And again, that's my redirected printer right there. So again, each printer, despite the manufacturer, using a single driver. And just to prove it to you real quick, only our universal driver on there, no Lexmark driver, no Ricoh driver installed. But again, despite the fact that no Lexmark drivers installed, we're still able to pop up the native driver UI for this Lexmark printer. This is not us recreating it. This is actually Lexmark's driver UI. So this printer can do some nice fancy things, print and hold, badge release. It can do some watermarking. It has some nice layout features, et cetera. You get the idea. So in this regards, you're kind of getting the best of both worlds. From an admin perspective, you're only getting a single driver you have to install and manage on your endpoints. From a user perspective, they're getting what looks to them like normal Windows printers, including all the features they need. So again, that learning curve is minimal. So let's go over to the self-service side, see how we can manage that. You can do a couple different ways. We can add a printer through a list, or again, we saw this a little bit before, through a map. So these maps, I'm going to bring up one right here. These maps are generated maps where you drop printers onto and then load them into Simplified Printing. Then you can supply these maps, these floor plans to your users so they can add the printers on their own. And again, this is self-service. So this is great for a user who is traveling to different rooms, different buildings, different floors, where they can pick the printer based on where they are that day, that week, and drop that printer in. We'll see how that works right here. So the maps are interactive. You can zoom in, zoom out, you can scale it correctly, and the big thing is you can add a printer. So here we go. We're going to add this brother printer right here. We'll see how that works, just like that. So after a quick loading screen, I'll come over here and you see that brother printer has been added right there. So again, that queue was built so quickly because the driver is already there. We're just building a queue around the driver. We can, of course, set that new printer as the default. And then since it's a self-service printer, I can remove it from my console right here. And then right here, no more brother printers. So I'll pause it right here. So again, this is the end user perspective. This is kind of how it all comes together. The big idea is that universal print driver. And again, this is Simplified Printing with the universal print driver. That universal print driver is already there for your endpoints. So think about your VDI, whether persistent or non-persistent, and you need a new printer over. You don't have to worry about getting that driver installed onto that image. You can just use the driver that's already there and build a printer queue around that. You'd also, I'm sure you've noticed so far, I have not pulled up my GPO management console. I have not created a GPO. So this is all done without GPOs. This is all done without scripts. This is all going to be processed post logged in process. So you're not bloating or loading or increasing the login time for your users. All right, let's move along. All right, so before we get into simplified driver management, I think Andrew's been keeping track of some questions. Do we have any questions we want to talk about now?
Yeah, there are a few questions that came up. One interesting one came up about the performance of print servers in a high load environment as far as when those jobs are spooling. You know, one of the things that we can do, because we have our own service running on that print server, that's our print server agent, we can actually bring jobs in. We create child processes to handle the spooling of those jobs in actually a better way than traditional Windows network printing. And so we've actually seen some environments that scale their print servers much higher than you would normally suggest for a traditional Windows environment. I mean, we've seen print servers running with a few thousand queues with, you know, constant loads in a healthcare environment running very smoothly. So we actually can increase the performance of the print server, not something that we normally talk about much, but it's a great question and something that we can add value for. There was a question about zero client VDI out in WAN printing. As far as optimizing, there's a couple ways that we do that. One is the compression we talked about earlier to really minimize the amount of traffic, but still keep that print fidelity in place. And also, Chris showed the feature where we can control bandwidth on a per printer or per print server basis, so that if you have special bandwidth needs, then we can certainly help with that as well. And finally, a specific question about support for Rico drivers, the full feature, the fiery print driver was in question specifically. We do support, we wrote this to really pull the information from any print driver so that our advanced print features and certainly our driver can mimic and present the interface for any of those kind of first-party manufacturer drivers. So it would certainly be something that we could handle in there as well. So I'm going to let Chris finish up with this demonstration, but certainly if you have other questions, keep chiming in and we'll answer them as we go.
Okay, great. Thank you. And thank you for the questions. We're going to switch gears a little bit, and we're going to talk about simplified driver management. Whereas simplified printing, what I just showed, dealt with that universal print driver. But there are situations where you need to install that native driver, or maybe you want to eliminate your print servers in your environment. This is where simplified driver management comes into play. This is going to allow you to import drivers into our database and then assign those drivers to your users, to your endpoints, all without a print server. So let's take a look how that works. The first thing we're going to see is the Simplified Driver Management Console. This is where you're going to import your drivers. The first thing is your driver list. Drivers have already been imported, as well as the printers that have already been created with those drivers. Import a new driver. Simple. Just click the driver you want to import, and you can select multiples at a time. I'm just going to do the select mark real quick, and you can see the progress down here at the bottom. So let's take a quick look, see how that works again. That was pretty quick. I'm going to select the Zebra driver. I'm going to import that driver. There's the progress right there, ready to go. So you can see that the new drivers have been added to our database. Those drivers are ready to be deployed to your users. What's going on right now is network side. I do want to talk real quick about the drivers. Again, once these drivers are imported into the SDM database, and they can then be deployed to your users, and again, all without a print server. So this is how we're eliminating those print servers. We're taking the drivers from the print servers to SDM to be deployed without the print server itself. What's going on right now is a network discovery of printers. So I can discover printers that are shared on my network and add those printers without having to go to each machine where those printers might be installed. So I'm going to add this brother printer up here. You can see it already has the IP address. You can see quick and easy to add. And all I have to do now is assign a quick driver to it, just like that. And now this brother is ready to be deployed to users and for direct IP printing, again, without the print server. So we're going to come over to the Simplified Console again. You noticed this from before. I can manage my print server printers, but I can also manage those native drivers as well. So I can manage both those type of environments as I'm transitioning off print servers, or if I need both print servers and native drivers, all from the same console. So refresh my database real quick. You can see that new brother has been added with the correct IP address and driver. There are the new drivers that I've added to my database, just like that. All right, so I'm going to create a new object. I'm going to type Zebra, and then I'm going to put in the IP address of my Zebra printer up here. And then I'm going to select that new Zebra driver I just added to my database in the list, just like that, set driver, and then save. And now once I save, this printer object with the IP address and the driver can then be assigned to a user in the same ways we did it with the print server printers. And again, this is a simple drag and drop process. So all I got to do is select the Zebra printer and then drag and drop into the admin assign. So now the next time I log into my workstation, I'm going to bring that up right here. Next time I log into this workstation or unlock and lock this workstation, I'm going to get that driver, that printer automatically. But to a question before, there is a manual refresh that users can initiate on their own. So I'm just proving to you right here the Zebra printer isn't already here. I go into the same user assigned printers tool we saw before and hit refresh printer. So you can do a live refresh of your printers without having to log off and log back on. So the driver has been added, the printer has been built. And you can see right there, there's a Zebra printer with a Zebra driver, as opposed to my print server printers that are using the universal printer. So again, you can use Simplified Console to manage both your print server printers as well as your native drivers. And then both of those components can be on the same endpoint if you choose to, or more likely different endpoints for different situations.
Okay, one other question that came in about that process. Chris was demonstrating the import mechanism, and someone asked about where that import list comes from. We can import drivers from the machine that you're running that import tool from. We can also discover printers from your print servers, or even using a Bonjour discovery process to find other network printers out there to aid in the assignment of those printers to really help get the information from your environment into the console quickly. Okay, so as we wrap up here, just really to talk again about our partnership with VMware. We've been VMware partners for many years now, and certainly worked on tailoring our tools for these kind of environments, for VMware Horizon environments, hybrid and more complex environments that are using multiple platforms to manage printing really across those Windows sessions and the Windows applications to really provide that consistent interface for both administrators and for users. And so there's really a lot of advantages that come from our virtual driver when we're talking about those VDI instances spinning up from the master image. And hopefully you kind of saw that as we went along and some of those highlights of where we really add in that extra layer of value in your VMware Horizon environments. Really quick, painless assignments of printers out to users. And one thing we didn't show was bulk assignments, or bulk imports, I should say. So really, even as you scale up into thousands of users and printers, this is a tool that really scales quite well as far as really easily being able to get the information into the console and usable right away. And so we talked about some of these other things as far as those advanced print features, a critical piece for our software, and ways that we can have the best of both easy assignments, but then also user capabilities as well. We'll be at some upcoming events. If you're at any of these, we'd love to set up a meeting time with you and see you face to face and really chat about ways that this might be applicable to your environment. We've got 2 events in February for Disrupt and HIMSS being the big healthcare conference. If you're going to be at that, please let us know and we can meet up. A few VMUG SuperCons that we'll be at, one in Philadelphia and one in Wisconsin later in the year. And then, of course, we're sponsors at VMworld in San Francisco. So, again, another place that if you think you might be attending that, we'll be there with information and live demonstrations, and it would be great to set up a time to meet. So we've kind of been answering questions as we've gone, but if you have any other questions, please chime in now, kind of in our last few minutes as we wrap up. There's a couple more in here. Chris, one question is about the installation process and the components that we have. You deal with customers setting up that POC quite frequently. What's involved with that?
Yeah, I do. I do that a lot. That's part of my job. So, and what I tell people who want to set up a POC or even deploy it right away into their live environments, we set up a guided installation of an hour, and that's really all it takes. The biggest thing we need to do is set up or configure the SQL databases. But in a lot of larger environments, that SQL database or that SQL server is already there. So in reality, the actual installation, especially in a POC, could take as much as 30 minutes. And I said this before, we don't require reboots or maintenance windows for those servers or those endpoints. We just install and you're good to go. You make assignments, you set up a print server, you assign a printer to a user, and you're good to go. You take off and get to work. That really goes behind the name of the product, Simplified Printing. We try to make things as simple as possible.
Good. And I think the last question we'll talk about here is licensing. And we have a few different license models, but the easiest is usually that per user license model. When we're talking about a VMware Horizon, how many seats do you have of that will usually be right alongside that. So if you have a seat of Horizon, you would add a seat of Simplified Printing, and then those user connections would be licensed. If it's a hybrid environment, like if you want to add on physical desktops, that is certainly easy as well. And it is per user. So if a user might be having it locally on their desktop, but also in their Horizon VDI deployment, that would just be one license. So we try to make that as simple as possible. Okay, hopefully we've answered the questions as we've gone. If not, we'll get back in touch with you through email. Candace, you want to close us out here?
Yeah, great. Thank you so much. Before we close out today, Andrew and Chris, I wanted to ask you specifically, is there anything you'd like to leave the audience with as a takeaway?
Yeah, we have on screen here our website, tricerat.com. Obviously, a lot of information there where you can request more information or even request a personalized demonstration where we can talk with you and consult with you as far as your specific needs, and we can show you the product as far as how it will layer into your environment. And what Chris really just talked about the ease of that POC process and layering into an existing environment really without a lot of hassle. It's very quick and easy. So there's a 30-day demo that you could download from our website that's fully supported that you can call in and get help with anytime. So I would really just direct you to the website and take advantage of those opportunities we're giving.
Great. Thank you so much. As a reminder to the audience, you will receive a follow-up email directing you to the on-demand link that you can go back and review, or you can share with a colleague, so feel free to do that as well. And there will be a short online evaluation that will pop up as you exit the webcast today. We encourage you to take that survey and let us know how things went today. Thanks so much for joining. Have a great rest of your day, everyone. And also, for the winner of the $100 Amex gift card, you will be emailed directly today or tomorrow. Thank you so much for joining. Have a great rest of your day, everyone.